Pregame.com.
Pregame.tv, Steve Fezzik, Teddy Covers, breaking down the first two, what they sometimes call the first three rounds of the NCAA Tournament, what we learned, and we'll be breaking down in another video what we can do going forward. But let's break it down here. Opening 4 days, we're all hungover from it all. Teddy, how did the tournament treat you so far?
You know, I had a decent opening weekend. I won all the big plays. Didn't do quite as well with the smaller plays. Had a better weekend than I did on Thursday and Friday. But overall, we made money. The clients are happy. And I'm happy, Steve. How about yourself?
Lost.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Davidson, game of the year.
Ooh.
Only lost by 31 points.
Well, you were in it until the opening tip.
Yeah. I hate that Iowa team. I'd mentioned how much I hate that Iowa team, but I'm not going to let it spoil our video here. We're going to be breaking down some bullet points, things that we learned, things to look for that we can learn from next term, and maybe we can take away going forward. Number one that I have down here, the teams that go in and the conference tourneys look great, win their big conference tourneys on Saturday or Sunday, they wheel back, don't do so well, right?
Oh yeah, I mean look at the results, and not just this year. Seasons past, the results have been remarkably similar. Iowa State wins the Big 12 tournament, bounced in the first round as big chalk. Wisconsin wins the Big 10 tournament, fails to cover first round as chalk. Zona, they played a really good game in the first round. They played great in the Pac-12 tournament. Guess what? They didn't cover. Even though they won by 21. Villanova, the only team of the major conference to win their major conference tournament and then to cover in the first round. What happened second round? Bounced completely. Kentucky, 0-2 against the spread this past weekend after winning the SEC tournament. And, of course, last but not least, Notre Dame fails to cover the spread in either of their first two first-round games after rolling through the ACC. So when you expend that level of energy and that level of emotion to win your conference tournament, very difficult to bounce back in I know it's the big dance, but the bottom line is for a first-round game, it's a less intense venue than any of these finals were over the course of last weekend. And you see teams consistently, the best teams, the teams that went all out the previous weekend, just don't get the job done in round one and oftentimes in round two.
Even if it's the big dance, hard to think that the kids can take Northeastern seriously after they just beat Duke. They think they're going to just walk over them. Next thing you know, they're fighting for their lives to win, laying 13.
Sure, when you think about it, a lot of these teams trying to get the kids to focus on videos of these lesser-named schools that don't have any marquee players after they've just beaten a bunch of elite teams, whether it's Michigan State or Duke or whoever. Kids aren't focused. They're not concentrating, and it certainly showed off in terms of ATS results. And this is typical. This is not an aberration for 2015. This is very typical when you look back over the long term. The teams that go all out to win their conference tourneys are not good bets the next weekend.
Let's talk about the betting marketplace and how it's not necessarily to be trusted. In the NFL, you see a 2-point favorite go up to a 3-point favorite. Usually you can lay it 2, absolutely do it. Not so in the tournament. On Thursday, I think money came on all the favorites. Games like SMU go up from 3 against UCLA up to 4. Boom, what happens? All the dogs cover 16-3-1 to start. If you're just watching the screen, watching those movements, you're not going to do very well trying to follow them, right?
Yeah, and that's really your MO much more than it is mine. You are an exceptional bettor, Steve, and I give you all the credit in the world for being able to figure out which of the line moves you want to follow and which ones you don't. But in general, in the NCAA tournament, if you're trying to follow these line moves, you're saying, oh, there's a big wise guy move on whoever. It doesn't matter. Even if you're getting the number that they bet at, it doesn't tend to be a particularly good bet. I don't think the syndicates had a very good weekend.
Northern Iowa pick them against Louisville, goes all the way up to -3, and get smacked around. He did with the poster child of that.
Now, let me ask you this. Would you be interested in fading some of these line moves? Do you think that's the better move moving forward? Because that's generally been my strategy come tournament time. I want to fade the money. I don't want to be on the tail end of that money.
Absolutely. The 8 of clubs method. Write down what the opening numbers are, see which one moves the most, and bet with the extra 3 points and take your chances, basically betting on Kenny White and the odds makers to be better than, or at least in the same league as the bettors who are jamming in all of these plays. One thing I do think we want to look at, moving to our third bullet point, conferences. One thing I think we can follow, when a conference shows that they were undervalued, and this year I really think it was the Pac-12, that Pac-10, that they absolutely, these teams were undervalued in the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Kenny White doesn't make the numbers anymore. He hasn't made them in a decade. Second of all, it's the Pac-12. 12.
He still makes numbers.
Oh, he does.
He still makes his numbers.
But his numbers aren't the sendouts for the Las Vegas casinos. But the bottom line, when we talk about conference affiliation, teams spend 10, 11 weeks, and they do nothing but play each other in conference. And they beat each other up, and you have no real idea about what they're capable of doing at a conference. And then all you have for at-a-conference stuff is things from back in November and December. And frankly, what a team was in November and December has nothing to do with what they are in March. And I tend to devalue early season wins and losses and early season statement games and that sort of thing. I devalue that a lot here in the month of March. But when you find a conference that all of a sudden they're covering numbers, and or the antithesis of that, they're not covering numbers, like the SEC. And you can look, and it's not just in the big dance. It's also in the NIT and the CBI and the CIT. The Pac-12's done well there as well. The SEC's done very poorly across the board, spread-wise, in these tournaments. So certainly something you want to pay attention to on Thursday and Friday, right from the get-go. Know which teams and which conferences are covering numbers, which conferences seem to be a little bit over.
Even Tuesday and Wednesday, so taking a look at the CBI, the NIT, all the different lesser tournaments, and see how those teams that wound up in those are doing those. And if you see, hey, all of a sudden, hey, all the the West Coast teams are doing well, or all the SEC teams are struggling, absolutely take that into consideration. I did want to talk about 2 points. I do lots of live wagering.
Sure, yeah. Why don't you give the viewers some ideas about some really good live wagering strategies? I
think 2 tips. The first being, if you have a top team, Kentucky, Arizona, and they're just kicking ass, they're up 25, the eye test says they're going to kill them. In practice, what's going to happen, hey, you want to advance. You don't care how much you win by. You got a game in 2 days. And so what we saw is the foot off the gas for Kentucky. Same thing for Arizona. If you did nothing but take these teams that are down 25 points and bet them plus 34 in live wagering 10 minutes into the second half, you did great. And I think that was a recurring theme that even some of these teams, like the poster child would be, look at Georgia Southern. They're down 12 at the end of the game. They win outright. It's like... well,
they had a miracle run. I mean, they had 13-0 to close out the game against
There was
Baylor.
A lot of those miracle runs. Northeastern had a miracle run against Notre Dame. It's just like it seems like again and again, this other team knows this is my last game. This is my ever, and they leave it all out there and they just keep bringing it. And it seems like the refs, maybe there's a little biased officiating towards the bigger schools. When those bigger schools get up double digits, then the officiating is more than fair at that point. If anything, you get some calls back for these little schools once the game is pretty much decided. Anything else for live wagering you want to share with our viewing audience? One more point, and we'll move on. I think when a team gets up 20, if it's a big favorite, you want to go under. The game is pretty much decided. The team's going to win. Kentucky's up 20 against Cincinnati. Nothing happens. But if a game is pick'em, if a team is favored and they're down 20 and there's 8 minutes to go, get ready for the longest 8 minutes of your life. You're going to see foul fest galore, and teams just aren't going to give up that think they have a good chance to win. And so, like anyone who watched the end of the Dayton-Oklahoma game, where Dayton can't score the whole second half, and then the second half just won't end, and they winds up landing 138. So there you have it. There's a couple of tips from Steve Fezzik about how to live wager in these games, and hopefully we gave you some good stuff that you can file away for next year when it comes down to betting that opening weekend of the big dance. Let's move forward. We looked back, now we're going to move forward. Sweet 16 betting tips, things to look for. Teddy Covers, Steve Fezzik, stay with us. Pregame.tv.